10-year-old Anna Clark shuffled through the hallways of Riverside Glenn Elementary, wearing an oversized, faded military jacket that hung like a cape around her small frame. The sleeves rolled up multiple times in the fabric, worn thin from years of use. The wealthy student snickered and whispered cruel jokes about the thrift store reject and her trailer park address, unaware that the barely visible patch above her heart bore the insignia of one of the Navy's most elite and classified SEAL teams. When 4-star General John Storm Carter arrived for the school's Veterans Day assembly, and his eyes fell upon that sacred emblem, his immediate salute would expose a story of heroism, sacrifice, and hidden valor that would forever change how this small Tennessee town viewed the quiet girl they had chosen to mock. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning bell echoed through the corridors of Riverside Glenn Elementary as students hurried to their classrooms, backpacks bouncing and sneakers squeaking against polished floors. Anna Clark moved against the current of rushing children, her steps deliberate but unhurried, shoulders slightly hunched as if trying to make herself invisible. The olive-green military jacket she wore had seen better days, its fabric softened by countless washings and the kind of wear that spoke of genuine use rather than fashion choice. The jacket's original owner had been 6'2", with broad shoulders built for carrying heavy gear across hostile terrain. On Anna's 10-year-old frame, it transformed into something between a coat and a security blanket, the hem reaching nearly to her knees while the sleeves required multiple careful rolls to free her hands. The brass buttons had lost their shine years ago, and the fabric showed the telltale signs of field use, tiny snags, and worn spots that marked places where equipment had rubbed against it during long missions. Above the left breast pocket, barely visible unless someone knew exactly where to look, the ghost of an embroidered patch remained. Years of washing had faded the colors until only the faintest outline suggested there had once been insignia there. The threads worn away until the design existed more as texture than image. To most observers, it appeared to be nothing more than a slightly raised area on the fabric, perhaps the remnant of some long, removed decoration. Anna paused at her locker, a bottom-row unit that required her to crouch down to work the combination. Her fingers, small and quick, spun the dial with practice efficiency, while other students flowed around her like water around a stone. She had learned early to make herself unobtrusive during the busy transition times when the hallways filled with the particular energy of children moving between spaces and activities. "Look at that," a voice said from somewhere above her, the tone carrying the particular cruelty that 12-year-olds could inject into casual observation. "She's wearing that nasty old thing again." Anna's fingers paused on the combination lock for just a moment before continuing their practice motion. She had heard variations of this comment dozens of times since the school year began 6 weeks ago, and she had developed the skill of appearing not to hear while actually cataloging every word for later examination in the privacy of her own thoughts. Tiffany Reed stood with 2 other girls from the 7th grade, her blonde hair styled in the kind of careful waves that required professional attention, and her clothes bearing the subtle but unmistakable markers of expense. Her father owned the largest bank in Riverside Glen, and Tiffany had grown up understanding that wealth conveyed certain privileges, including the right to comment on those who possessed less. "It smells like a thrift store," added one of her companions, a girl named Melissa, whose own jacket bore the logo of a designer brand that cost more than Anna's mother made in 2 weeks of double shifts at the diner. Anna pulled her textbooks from the locker with movements that appeared calm and methodical, though her jaw tightened slightly as she arranged her materials for the morning's classes. The jacket did not smell like a thrift store. It smelled faintly of the military raw detergent her mother used to wash it, combined with something else that Anna couldn't quite identify, but that made her feel safe when she buried her face in the collar during difficult moments. Maybe her mom got it from the donation bin at church, Tiffany continued, her voice pitched to carry just far enough to reach Anna's ears while maintaining the pretense of private conversation. You know, they live in that trailer park by the river. The observation was factually accurate, though delivered with the kind of disdain that transformed a simple statement of residence into an indictment of character. Anna did indeed live in Pinneridge Trailer Park, in a double-wide mobile home that her mother rented for $400 a month, utilities not included. The park sat on a piece of land that flooded every few years when the Cumberland River rose beyond its banks, which kept the rent affordable for people like Jennifer Clark, who worked service jobs and counted every dollar twice before spending it once. Anna closed her locker with a quiet click and stood, adjusting the jacket's collar with a small gesture that was part habit and part armor. The movement caused the 2 long sleeves to slip down over her hands, and she automatically pushed them back up with a kind of practiced motion that spoke of wearing the garment daily for months. I heard her dad supposedly died in the military, said Melissa. The word supposedly carrying a weight of skepticism that suggested she doubted even this basic fact about Anna's family history. But if he was really some kind of hero, why would they be living like that? The question hung in the air with the particular cruelty of childhood logic, the kind of reasoning that assumed heroism and financial security were naturally linked. That sacrifice should somehow translate into material reward. Anna's grip tightened on her books, her knuckles showing white against the skin, but her expression remained carefully neutral as she began walking toward her first period classroom. Maybe he wasn't even really in the military, Tiffany said, her voice growing bolder as Anna moved away, the distance providing courage for increasingly harsh speculation. Maybe that jacket is just something she found somewhere, and she wears it to get attention. Chase Porter appeared at Tiffany's shoulder as if summoned by the conversation, his presence adding male validation to the group's assessment of Anna's situation. At 11, he was already showing signs of the confidence that came with being the son of a defense contractor whose business had grown wealthy on government contracts. His clothes were expensive, but calculated to appear casual, the kind of studied carelessness that cost more than most people's formal wear. My dad says a lot of people fake military service to get benefits, Chase added, his voice carrying the authority of someone repeating adult conversation without fully understanding its implications. He calls them stolen valor cases. The accusation represented a new level of cruelty, transforming Anna's quiet dignity into something suspicious and potentially fraudulent. The suggestion that she was actively deceiving people by wearing her father's jacket added layers of moral judgment to what had previously been simple mockery about appearance and economic status. Anna reached her classroom door and paused, her hand on the handle while she composed herself for the transition from hallway cruelty to classroom normally. Mrs. Beth Hughes taught 4th and 5th grade in a combined classroom, a common arrangement in smaller schools where enrollment numbers didn't justify separate sections for each grade level. Anna was one of only 3 5th graders in the mixed class, which made her simultaneously older than most of her classmates and younger than the middle schoolers who had been commenting on her appearance. "Good morning, Anna," Mrs. Hughes said as Anna entered the classroom, her voice carrying the kind of professional cheerfulness that teachers use to greet students while simultaneously assessing their emotional state and readiness to learn. "How are you today?" "Fine. Thank you," Anna replied, her voice soft but clear, the response automatic and designed to deflect further inquiry into her actual state of mind. Mrs. Hughes was a veteran teacher who had spent 22 years in the Riverside Glenn school system, long enough to recognize the signs of a student carrying emotional weight beyond their years. She had noticed the dynamics surrounding Anna Clark, the way certain students seemed to target her for subtle harassment, and the way Anna had developed strategies for deflecting attention rather than engaging with her peers. The teacher's assessment of the situation was complicated by her own assumptions about Anna's family circumstances. She knew that Jennifer Clark worked at the diner, that they lived in the trailer park, and that Anna qualified for free lunch under the federal assistance program. These facts, combined with Anna's quiet demeanor and worn clothing, had led Mrs. Hughes to categorize her as one of the disadvantaged students who required patience and lower expectations rather than academic challenge. Anna took her seat in the 3rd row, an assigned spot that placed her near the middle of the classroom, where she could observe her surroundings while avoiding the front row visibility that often led to unwanted attention. She arranged her materials with the same careful precision she brought to most tasks. Textbook aligned with the desk's edge, pencils sharpened and ready. Notebook open to a fresh page for the day's lessons. Ethan Scott occupied the seat directly to Anna's left, a 9-year-old 4th grader whose friendship represented one of the few bright spots in Anna's school experience. Ethan's family situation was only marginally better than Anna's. His father worked in maintenance at Fort Campbell, and his mother cleaned houses for some of the wealthier families in town, but his naturally optimistic personality seemed to deflect the kind of social targeting that Anna attracted. "Did you finish the math homework?" Ethan asked in a whisper, his question motivated more by genuine concern for Anna's academic well-being than any desire to copy her work. "Yes," Anna replied quietly, showing him the completed worksheet with problems solved in her careful, precise handwriting. Her academic performance was consistently strong, despite the challenges of her home situation, though Mrs. Hughes tended to attribute this to natural intelligence, rather than the disciplined study habits that Anna had developed out of necessity. The morning announcements crackled through the intercom system, Principal Dave Collins's voice filling the classroom with reminders about upcoming events and changes to the daily schedule. Anna listened with the careful attention she brought to all official information, understanding that missing important details could lead to embarrassing mistakes or missed opportunities. "Don't forget that our Veterans Day Assembly is scheduled for Friday morning at 10 a.m., Principal Collins announced, his voice taking on the slightly elevated tone that adults used when discussing patriotic topics with children. "We're honored to have a very special guest speaker, and I know you'll all want to show your respect for our veterans and active duty service members." The announcement created a small stir of interest among the students who generally welcomed any disruption to their normal academic routine. Veterans Day assemblies typically meant shortened class periods and the possibility of interesting stories from people who had served in distant places doing important work that most of the children could only imagine. Anna felt a familiar tightness in her chest at the mention of Veterans Day, the holiday that was supposed to honor people like her father, but that often felt more like a reminder of loss than celebration. She had learned to navigate these occasions with the same careful neutrality she applied to other potentially difficult situations, participating when required, but avoiding the kind of enthusiasm that might draw attention to her personal connection to military service. "I wonder who the speaker is going to be," Ethan whispered, his excitement genuine and infectious among the other students who were beginning to speculate about the identity of their guest. Anna nodded noncommittally, her attention already shifting to the mathematics lesson that Mrs. Hughes was beginning to present on the whiteboard. She had learned that engaging too deeply with speculation about military-related events often led to questions about her own family that she preferred not to answer in front of classmates who had already demonstrated their willingness to use personal information as ammunition for cruelty. The morning progressed with the familiar rhythm of elementary school education subjects, changing at regular intervals while students moved through reading groups, mathematics instruction, and social studies discussions that required them to think about communities and civic responsibility. Anna participated when called upon, her answers consistently thoughtful and well-reasoned, though she rarely volunteered information beyond what was specifically requested. During the transition to recess, as students gathered jackets and prepared to head outside for 30 minutes of supervised play, Anna once again became aware of the attention her appearance attracted. The playground was a less structured environment where social hierarchies asserted themselves more freely and where the adult supervision was focused primarily on physical safety rather than the subtler forms of cruelty that children could inflict on one another. "There goes the girl with the fake military jacket," Tiffany Reed said to her circle of friends as they prepared to claim the best spots on the playground equipment. "I bet she thinks people are impressed." Chase Porter had joined the group by this time, his presence lending additional weight to their collective assessment of Anna's character and motivations. The sixth grader possessed the kind of social confidence that came from never having experienced genuine hardship, and his comments carried the authority of someone whose opinions were rarely challenged by his peers. "My dad says people who pretend to be connected to the military are actually dishonoring real veterans," Chase added, his voice loud enough to be heard by other students who are beginning to pay attention to the conversation. "It's actually against the law in some places." The accusation represented an escalation in the campaign of harassment that had been building throughout the morning, transforming simple mockery about appearance into suggestions of actual wrongdoing. Anna, who was walking ahead of the group and could hear every word, felt her shoulders tense despite her efforts to appear unaffected by their comments. She had worn her father's jacket to school every day since the weather had turned cool enough to require outerwear, not as a statement or an attempt to gain attention, but simply because it was the warmest coat she owned, and because wearing it made her feel connected to the father she barely remembered. The idea that other people might view this as deceptive or inappropriate had not occurred to her until the harassment began. And now she found herself questioning whether she had the right to wear something that had belonged to someone whose service she could not fully explain or defend. The playground stretched out before them, a landscape of possibilities for both connection and conflict, where the next phase of Anna's day would unfold under the watchful eyes of teachers who saw only the surface interactions while missing the deeper currents of cruelty and resilience that shaped the true experience of childhood in their small Tennessee town. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Pine Ridge Trailer Park as Anna walked home from school, her backpack heavy with textbooks and the weight of another day navigating the careful balance between visibility and invisibility that defined her existence at Riverside Glenn Elementary. The gravel road crunched under her worn sneakers, each step bringing her closer to the sanctuary of home where she could finally shed the defensive posture that school required. Trailer number 47 sat on a small lot bordered by chain-link fencing and punctuated by the kind of practical landscaping that prioritized function over beauty. A narrow concrete pad served as a front porch furnished with 2 aluminum chairs that Jennifer Clark had rescued from a garage sale and painted bright blue in an attempt to inject cheerfulness into their modest surroundings. The trailer itself was older but well-maintained, its white siding clean despite the constant battle against the dust that rural Tennessee, roads kicked up with every passing vehicle. Anna climbed the 3 metal steps to the front door, her key ready before she reached the landing. The interior of their home reflected her mother's determination to create warmth and comfort within the constraints of limited space and budget. Photographs lined at the walls, mostly pictures of Anna at various ages, school events, and a few formal military portraits that held places of honor near the small dining table. One photograph commanded particular attention, positioned where anyone entering the main living area would notice it immediately. The image showed a young man in navy dress blues, his posture straight and confident, eyes focused somewhere beyond the camera with the kind of intensity that suggested familiarity with serious responsibility. Master Chief Petty Officer Matthew Clark's final official portrait had been taken 3 months before his death during a brief stateside assignment that had allowed him to spend 2 precious weeks with his wife and 5-year-old daughter. Anna set her backpack on the small kitchen counter and automatically began the after-school routine that had become second nature over the years. Homework first, then whatever household tasks needed attention, followed by quiet activities that wouldn't disturb neighbors in the closely packed community where sound carried easily between units. She pulled her father's jacket tighter around her shoulders, the gesture unconscious but comforting. As she settled at the kitchen table with her mathematics worksheet, the numbers blurred slightly as Anna's mind drifted to the morning's encounters. The familiar sting of her classmates' comments mixing with confusion about their implications. The suggestion that wearing her father's jacket might be inappropriate or even illegal had planted a seed of doubt that grew stronger as she replayed the conversations in her memory. She had never questioned her right to wear something that belonged to her father, but now she wondered if there were rules about such things that she didn't understand. The sound of a car door slamming announced her mother's arrival home from the morning shift at Sunrise Diner. Jennifer Clark's workday had begun at 5:30 in the morning, serving coffee and breakfast to truck drivers, construction workers, and the early rising residents of Riverside Glen, who preferred the diner's honest cooking to the chain restaurants that had sprouted along the highway. Her uniform, a pale pink dress, with white trim that had seen better days, bore the evidence of 8 hours spent navigating between hot grills and demanding customers. "How was school, sweetheart?" Jennifer asked as she entered, her voice carrying the particular exhaustion that came from maintaining cheerful customer service, while worrying about unpaid bills and her daughter's emotional well-being. At 34, she possessed the kind of tired beauty that spoke of someone who had faced significant challenges while refusing to surrender to despair. "Fine," Anna replied, the automatic response that protected both of them from conversations that might reveal problems neither could easily solve. Jennifer recognized the tone, having used a similar deflection strategies during her own difficult childhood in a different small town where poverty carried social stigma and limited opportunities. She poured herself a cup of coffee from the pot that stayed warm throughout the day and settled into the chair across from Anna, her movements careful and deliberate as she transitioned from work mode to mother mode. "Mrs. Russell mentioned that you've been eating lunch alone lately," Jennifer said gently, referring to the diner owner, whose network of connections throughout Riverside Glen meant she often knew about local happenings before the people directly involved. "Everything okay with your friends?" Anna's pencil paused above her worksheet as she considered how to answer truthfully without causing her mother additional worry. Jennifer worked hard to provide for them, often taking double shifts when available and occasionally cleaning houses on weekends to supplement their income. The last thing Anna wanted was to add social problems at school to the list of challenges her mother was already managing. "Some of the kids don't like my jacket," Anna said, carefully, testing the waters of honesty while avoiding the more painful details of her daily experience. Jennifer's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, her maternal instincts, recognizing that this simple statement likely concealed more complex social dynamics. She studied her daughter's face, noting the careful neutrality that Anna had learned to adopt when discussing difficult topics, and felt the familiar surge of protectiveness mixed with helplessness that characterized so much of single parenthood. "Your father's jacket?" Jennifer asked, though she already knew the answer. Anna nodded, her fingers unconsciously adjusting the collar in the gesture that had become habitual whenever the garment was mentioned. The jacket had been one of the few personal items that the Navy had returned after Matthew's death, along with his medals, some photographs, and a letter of condolence that used phrases like classified operations and service to his country without providing any meaningful details about what had actually happened. Jennifer reached across the table and covered Anna's small hand with her own, the contact warm and reassuring despite the calluses that marked years of hard physical work. She had wrestled with the decision to let Anna wear Matthew's jacket, understanding both the comfort it provided and the potential for unwanted attention or questions that would be difficult to answer. "Tell me exactly what they're saying," Jennifer said, her voice taking on the firm tone that indicated this was not a request, but a gentle command. Anna hesitated, then began to recount the morning's events in the careful, factual manner she had learned to use when reporting difficult situations. She described Tiffany's comments about thrift stores and trailer parks, Chase's accusations about stolen valor, and the growing sense that her classmates viewed her father's service with suspicion rather than respect. As Anna spoke, Jennifer felt anger building in her chest, the hot protective fury that came from watching someone attack her child through the memory of her deceased husband. Matthew Clark had died serving his country in ways that Jennifer still didn't fully understand. Operations so classified that even his widow had been given only the most basic information about the circumstances of his death. "They don't know what they're talking about," Jennifer said when Anna finished her account, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "Your father earned the right to wear that jacket, and you have every right to wear it now." But what if they're right about the laws? Anna asked, voicing the fear that had been growing throughout the day. What if I'm not supposed to wear military things? Jennifer stood and walked to the small desk, where she kept important documents in a file box that had accompanied them through 3 moves since Matthew's death. She retrieved a manila folder and returned to the table, her movements purposeful, as she opened it to reveal official-looking papers with government seals and formal language. "This is your father's DD-214, Jennifer explained, showing Anna a document that meant nothing to the 10-year-old, but represented the official record of Matthew Clark's military service. It shows that he served honorably for 12 years before he died. And this," she continued, producing another paper, "is the citation that came with his Bronze Star Medal." Anna studied the documents with the serious attention she brought to anything connected to her father, though the military terminology and bureaucratic language were largely incomprehensible to her. What she could understand was the tone of respect and recognition that permeated the official language, the sense that Matthew Clark had been valued by the institution he had served. The jacket was issued to him personally. Jennifer continued, her voice taking on the quality of someone sharing sacred information. "It's not a uniform piece that belongs to the military. It's his personal gear, and it belongs to our family." Now, the explanation provided some comfort, but Anna's practical 10-year-old mind immediately identified the core problem that no amount of official documentation could solve. "They still won't believe me," she said quietly. "They think I'm lying about everything." Jennifer recognized the truth in her daughter's assessment. Riverside Glen was a small town where social hierarchies were well established and financial status often determined credibility. The fact that they lived in a trailer park and relied on Jennifer's service job income automatically placed them in a category that some people viewed with suspicion or condescension. "Would it help if I came to school and talked to your teacher?" Jennifer offered, though they both knew that such intervention might create more problems than it solved by marking Anna as someone who needed her mother to fight her battles. "No," Anna said quickly, then softened her response when she saw the hurt that flashed across Jennifer's face. "I mean, I can handle it. They'll probably get bored and move on to bothering someone else." The hope in Anna's voice was forced, and both mother and daughter knew that the harassment was unlikely to simply fade away without some kind of intervention or significant change in circumstances. Bullies rarely abandoned targets who responded with the kind of quiet dignity that Anna maintained, especially when those targets possessed vulnerabilities that could be exploited for social entertainment. Jennifer returned the documents to their folder with careful precision, her mind working through possibilities for addressing Anna's situation without making it worse. The upcoming Veterans Day Assembly represented both an opportunity and a potential disaster, depending on how the school community chose to interpret Anna's presence and her connection to military service. "There's something else you should know about your father," Jennifer said, her voice taking on the careful tone she used when sharing information that was important but potentially confusing. "Some of the work he did for the Navy was classified, which means they can't talk about it publicly even now." Anna looked up from her homework with renewed attention, sensing that this information was significant in ways she didn't yet fully understand. "That's why we don't have a lot of details about what happened when he died," Jennifer continued. "It's not because he wasn't important or because his service didn't matter. It's because some kinds of service have to stay secret to protect other people who are still doing that kind of work." The explanation opened new questions in Anna's mind, while providing context for some of the gaps in her knowledge about her father's career. She had always wondered why her mother seemed to know so little about Matthew's day-to-day work, why there were periods of his service that were mentioned only in vague terms, and why some of his military friends had stopped visiting after his death. So, he really was a hero? Anna asked, the word carrying the weight of playground accusations and her own need for certainty about her father's character. Yes, Jennifer replied without hesitation, her voice carrying absolute conviction. He really was. The conversation was interrupted by the rumble of a motorcycle pulling into the lot outside, followed by the sound of heavy boots on gravel. Through the window, Anna could see Evelyn Phillips approaching their door, her gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her demeanor suggesting someone with important business to discuss. At 67, Evelyn possessed the kind of non-nonsense authority that came from 3 decades of Army nursing and another decade of volunteer work with military families. She had noticed Anna Clark from the beginning of the school year, recognizing something in the girl's bearing that reminded her of other military children she'd encountered over the years. "Jennifer," Evelyn called through the screen door, her voice carrying the crisp efficiency that had served her well in field hospitals and emergency rooms. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by unannounced, but there's something we need to discuss about Anna." Jennifer opened the door immediately, her expression mixing curiosity with the automatic concern that any unexpected visit could trigger in a single mother managing multiple pressures. Evelyn's reputation in the community was solid, her work coordinating school volunteers and veteran support programs, earning respect from families across the economic spectrum. "Come in, please," Jennifer said, stepping aside to allow Evelyn to enter their modest living space. "Anna, you remember Mrs. Phillips from school?" Anna nodded politely, remembering the older woman from various school functions where she seemed to appear whenever there were organizational tasks that required someone with natural leadership abilities. Evelyn's presence at their home suggested that Anna's school situation had attracted more attention than she had realized. "I've been hearing things around school," Evelyn said without preamble, settling into the offered chair with the direct manner of someone who preferred honest conversation to social pleasantries. "Some students are giving Anna trouble about that jacket she wears." Jennifer's shoulders tensed as she realized that Anna's problems had become visible enough to reach adult attention, which meant they were likely more serious than her daughter had revealed. "What kind of things are you hearing?" "Accusations about stolen valor, suggestions that she's pretending to have military connections for attention," Evelyn replied, her voice carrying disapproval for the accusers rather than doubt about Anna's legitimacy. "The kind of ignorant nonsense that comes from children who don't understand what they're talking about." Anna remained quiet at the kitchen table, her homework forgotten, as she listened to the adults discuss her situation with the kind of serious attention that made her problems feel both more real and more manageable. Having Evelyn Phillips as an ally represented a significant shift in the social dynamics that had been working against her. "I knew your husband," Evelyn continued, turning to address Jennifer directly. "Not personally, but I knew his reputation. Matthew Clark was well regarded among the medical personnel who worked with his unit. We heard stories." Jennifer's breath caught at this unexpected connection to Matthew's military service. The first time since his death that someone in Riverside Glen had demonstrated direct knowledge of his career and character. "You worked with Navy SEALs?" Army combat nursing put you in contact with all branches, Evelyn explained. Special operations personnel often needed medical support that went beyond standard field treatment. Your husband's team had a reputation for taking care of their wounded and never leaving anyone behind. The conversation provided Anna with new information about her father's service, while validating her mother's assertions about his character and importance. Hearing these details from someone with direct military experience carried weight that official documents and parental reassurance could not match. The point is, Evelyn continued, Anna has every right to wear that jacket, and the children giving her trouble need to learn some respect for military sacrifice. I'm planning to address this situation before it gets worse. Jennifer felt a surge of gratitude mixed with concern about unintended consequences, understanding that adult intervention could sometimes escalate childhood conflicts rather than resolving them. What did you have in mind? The Veterans Day Assembly, Evelyn replied, her expression suggesting she had already formulated a specific plan. It's time. This community learned something about honoring military families, especially those who've paid the ultimate price. Anna looked up from her worksheet with new interest, sensing that the upcoming assembly might become something more significant than the routine patriotic program she had been expecting. The prospect of having her father's service acknowledged publicly created both excitement and anxiety, representing validation she craved alongside attention she had learned to avoid. I think that would be wonderful, Jennifer said, her voice carrying hope tempered by the protective instincts that had guided her parenting for the past 5 years. As long as it doesn't make things harder for Anna. Evelyn's expression softened as she looked at the 10-year-old who had been quietly absorbing every word of the adult conversation. Anna, how would you feel about people learning the truth about your father's service? Anna considered the question carefully, weighing her desire for vindication against her fear of increased scrutiny from classmates who had already demonstrated their capacity for cruelty. Would it stop them from saying mean things? It might, Evelyn replied honestly, but more importantly, it would give you the chance to honor your father's memory publicly. That's something you shouldn't have to hide or apologize for. The conversation continued as afternoon faded toward evening. 3 generations of women united by their connection to military service and their recognition that Anna's situation represented something larger than simple childhood bullying. Plans began to take shape for the Veterans Day Assembly. While Anna's understanding of her own place in her father's legacy grew stronger with each passing moment, Wednesday morning brought an unusual tension to Riverside Glenn Elementary as word of the upcoming Veterans Day Assembly spread through the student body with the particular efficiency that characterizes institutional gossip. Anna arrived at school to find her usual careful anonymity disrupted by whispered conversations that seemed to follow her through the hallways, creating an atmosphere of anticipation that made her increasingly uncomfortable. Principal Dave Collins had spent the previous evening making phone calls and sending emails, his administrative duties expanding to include coordination with military personnel whose involvement in Friday's ceremony was beginning to take on dimensions he hadn't initially anticipated. What had started as a routine patriotic program was evolving into something more substantial, though he remained unaware of the specific catalyst that had triggered this transformation. Mrs. Beth Hughes noticed the change in classroom dynamics immediately, her experienced teacher's instincts recognizing that some kind of social shift was occurring among her students. The usual patterns of interaction had been replaced by a heightened awareness that centered somehow on Anna Clark. Though the specific nature of the attention remained unclear to the adult observer, "I heard they're bringing in a real general for the assembly," Chase Porter announced to his circle of friends during the morning break, his voice carrying the authority of someone whose father's defense, contracting business, occasionally provided insider information about military activities. Not just some regular soldier, but someone really important. Tiffany Reed absorbed this information with the calculating attention she brought to any development that might affect her social standing within the school hierarchy. The prospect of a high-ranking military visitor created opportunities for demonstration of her family's community prominence while also raising questions about how Anna Clark's presence might complicate the more usual social dynamics. "Why would they bring someone like that to our little school?" asked Melissa, her question reflecting genuine curiosity mixed with the excitement that came from being included in important conversations. "My dad thinks it has something to do with that girl," Chase replied, lowering his voice and gesturing subtly toward Anna, who was sitting across the classroom reading a library book while apparently ignoring their discussion. "Maybe someone complained about her wearing that fake military stuff." The speculation contained enough plausibility to gain traction among the listening students, creating a narrative that positioned Anna as someone whose behavior had attracted official attention rather than recognition. The suggestion that she might be in trouble for her choice of clothing provided a satisfying explanation for the unusual circumstances surrounding the assembly. Anna turned a page in her book with deliberate calm, her eyes tracking the words while her ears processed every syllable of the conversation taking place just beyond the range of normal hearing. The library book, a biography of Amelia Earhart, had been chosen specifically for its subject matter, providing both educational value and a connection to themes of courage and determination that resonated with her current circumstances. Ethan Scott moved his desk slightly closer to Anna's during the transition between mathematics and reading instruction, his loyalty to his friend expressing itself through small gestures of solidarity that didn't require verbal communication. At 9 years old, he possessed an intuitive understanding of social dynamics that allowed him to recognize when someone needed support, even if he couldn't fully comprehend the complexities of the situation. "Are you okay?" Ethan whispered, his question simple but sincere, as he arranged his reading materials. "Yeah," Anna replied quietly, her standard response carrying more conviction than she actually felt about her circumstances. The morning's lessons proceeded with surface normally, while underlying currents of anticipation continued to build among students who sensed that Friday's assembly would be different from previous year's routine observances. Mrs. Hughes maintained her usual instructional pace, though she found herself glancing more frequently toward Anna and noting the subtle changes in how other students were interacting with her. During lunch period, the social dynamics that had been simmering throughout the morning erupted into open conflict in the cafeteria, where the combination of less structured supervision and the informal atmosphere of mealtime created conditions for more direct confrontation. Anna sat at her usual table near the windows, a location that provided natural light for reading while offering easy exit routes when social situations became uncomfortable. Her lunch consisted of items from the free meal program, supplemented by an apple and crackers that Jennifer had packed to ensure adequate nutrition, the careful combination reflecting both practical necessity and maternal concern. Tiffany Reed approached with a confidence that came from having spent the morning building support for her interpretation of recent events among her peer group. Her entourage included not only her usual followers, but also several students who normally remained neutral in social conflicts, but had been drawn into the controversy by curiosity and the promise of entertainment. "So, Anna," Tiffany began, her voice pitched to carry across the immediate area while maintaining the pretense of casual conversation. "I heard that the assembly on Friday is actually about you." Anna continued eating her sandwich without looking up. Her decision to ignore the provocation based on experience that suggested engagement would only escalate whatever confrontation Tiffany was attempting to initiate. "My dad talked to someone at the bank who knows someone at the school district." Tiffany continued, embellishing her claim with the kind of official-sounding connections that small-town social hierarchies valued. "They said someone complained about students wearing fake military uniforms to school." The accusation hung in the air with enough specificity to command attention from nearby tables where other students began listening with the focused interest that children brought to developing social dramas. Anna's continued silence was interpreted by some observers as guilt rather than dignity, the absence of denial becoming evidence of wrongdoing in the logic of playground justice. Chase Porter materialized beside Tiffany's group as if summoned by the escalating tension, his presence adding male authority to what had begun as female-dominated social warfare. "My dad says wearing military stuff when you're not actually in the military is called stolen valor," he announced, repeating the phrase he had learned the previous day. "It's actually a federal crime." Anna's grip tightened on her sandwich, her knuckles showing white against the brown paper bag as she struggled to maintain the composure that had served as her primary defense mechanism throughout months of subtle harassment. The escalation from mockery to accusations of criminal behavior represented a new level of attack that challenged her ability to respond with silence and dignity. "Is that why you never talk about what your dad actually did?" Tiffany pressed, sensing vulnerability in Anna's continued refusal to engage. "Because you know it's all made up." The attack on her father's memory proved to be the catalyst that finally broke through Anna's carefully maintained self-control. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the linoleum floor, with a sound that commanded attention from across the cafeteria, her small frame rigid, with a kind of controlled fury that surprised everyone who had interpreted her quietness as weakness. "My father was Master Chief Petty Officer Matthew Clark," Anna said, her voice clear and steady despite the emotion behind it. "He served 12 years in the Navy and died on a classified mission when I was 5 years old." The declaration carried enough conviction and specific detail to create doubt among some of the listening students, though Tiffany's commitment to her position prevented her from backing down in the face of this new information. "Anyone can make up names and titles," Tiffany replied, though her voice carried less certainty than her words suggested. "If he was really some kind of hero, why don't you have any proof?" Anna reached into her backpack and withdrew a small photograph that she carried with her daily, a wallet. Sized version of her father's final official portrait that showed him in dress blues with ribbons and insignia clearly visible. She placed it on the table with the kind of reverence that children reserved for their most precious possessions. "This is proof," Anna said quietly, her voice carrying across the now silent cafeteria as other conversations stopped and attention focused on the confrontation unfolding near the windows. Chase examined the photograph with the skeptical attention he brought to anything that challenged his preconceptions, looking for evidence of forgery or manipulation that would support his existing beliefs about Anna's truthfulness. The image appeared authentic, showing a young man whose resemblance to Anna was unmistakable, dressed in a uniform that carried multiple ribbons and badges indicating significant military experience. "Pictures can be fake," Chase said finally, though his voice lacked the confidence he had displayed earlier. "My dad says people buy military photos online all the time and claim they're relatives." The suggestion that Anna would fabricate not only her father's service, but his very existence represented such a profound level of deception that several students who had been following the confrontation began to shift their positions. Recognizing that the accusations had moved beyond reasonable doubt into territory that seemed unlikely and cruel. Mrs. Sharon Webb, the lunch supervisor, approached the table with a purposeful stride that indicated adult intervention was imminent. Her role required her to maintain order and safety rather than resolve complex social disputes, but the escalating tension had reached a level that demanded immediate attention. "What's going on here?" Mrs. Webb asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to managing large groups of children in potentially volatile situations. "Nothing," Tiffany replied quickly, her instinctive response to adult supervision being to minimize any situation that might result in consequences for her behavior. Anna carefully returned the photograph to her backpack, her movements deliberate and controlled as she processed a confrontation and its aftermath. The public declaration of her father's service felt both liberating and terrifying, representing the first time she had openly defended his memory against direct attack. "Anna, are you all right?" Mrs. Webb asked, recognizing that the quiet girl was at the center of whatever dispute had been taking place. "Yes, ma'am," Anna replied, her voice steady despite the emotional turbulence of the previous few minutes. Mrs. Webb's experienced eye took in the body language and facial expressions of the assembled students, noting the tension that suggested more significant conflict than the children were willing to acknowledge. "Everyone, finish your lunch and prepare for afternoon classes," she announced, her tone indicating that the matter was considered closed, regardless of any underlying issues that remained unresolved. The dispersal of the crowd left Anna alone at her table with Ethan, who had remained beside her throughout the confrontation with the loyalty that characterized their friendship. His presence provided comfort without requiring explanation or analysis of what had just occurred. "That was brave," Ethan said, quietly, his admiration genuine and uncomplicated by the social calculations that motivated many of their classmates. Anna managed a small smile, the first genuine expression of positive emotion she had displayed all day. "Thanks for staying." The afternoon classes proceeded with an undercurrent of awareness that something significant had shifted in the social dynamics of their small school community. Anna's public declaration of her father's service had created new information that students were still processing, while the approaching Veterans Day Assembly had taken on additional significance as a potential resolution to questions that had been raised about military service and family honor. Mrs. Hughes noticed the change in classroom atmosphere immediately, her teacher's instincts recognizing that some kind of important interaction had occurred during lunch period. Anna appeared more alert and engaged than usual, as if the act of defending her father's memory had somehow freed her from the defensive posture she had maintained throughout the semester. During the final period of the day, Principal Collins's voice crackled through the intercom system with an announcement that commanded immediate attention from every classroom in the building. Students and faculty, Principal Collins began his tone, carrying the formal weight that administrators used for important communications. I want to remind everyone that our Veterans Day Assembly on Friday will feature a very special guest speaker, 4-star General John Carter from Fort Campbell. The mention of a 4-star general created an immediate stir of excitement and apprehension among students who had never encountered such high-ranking military authority. Anna felt her stomach tighten with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety, understanding that the presence of such an important figure would elevate everything about the assembly beyond routine observance. General Carter will be speaking about military service and sacrifice, Principal Collins continued, and we expect all students to demonstrate the respect and attention that such an honored guest deserves. As the announcement concluded and normal classroom activities resumed, Anna found herself caught between hope and fear about what Friday's assembly might bring. The validation she craved for her father's service was potentially within reach, but the increased attention and scrutiny that would accompany such recognition carried risks that her 10-year-old mind struggled to fully comprehend. Tiffany Reed and Chase Porter exchanged glances across the classroom, their earlier confidence in their assessment of Anna's situation now tempered by uncertainty about what a 4-star general's presence might reveal. The stakes of their harassment campaign had suddenly escalated beyond simple social dominance into territory where adult authority and institutional power might intervene in ways they had not anticipated. The remainder of the school day passed with unusual tension as students and faculty alike began to contemplate what Friday's assembly would bring to their small school community. Anna gathered her belongings with the same careful precision she brought to all her activities. But her mind was occupied with thoughts of her father's service and the possibility that his memory might finally receive the recognition it deserved. As she prepared to leave the building, Anna noticed Evelyn Phillips standing near the main entrance, her presence suggesting coordination with school administration that went beyond routine volunteer activities. Their eyes met briefly, and Evelyn offered a small nod that conveyed both encouragement and the promise of support for whatever challenges lay ahead. The walk home through the late afternoon sunshine carried new weight as Anna considered the implications of the day's events and the approaching assembly that would determine whether her father's service would be honored or whether she would face continued harassment for wearing his jacket. The gravel road that led to Pine Ridge Trailer Park stretched ahead of her, each step taking her closer to the sanctuary of home, where she could process the day's emotional turbulence and the safety of her mother's presence. The shadows were growing longer as Anna reached trailer number 47, her key ready before she climbed the metal steps to their front door. Inside, the familiar photographs of her father watched over their modest living space, silent witnesses to the courage and sacrifice that Anna was finally beginning to understand and defend. Friday's assembly would bring answers to questions that had haunted her throughout the semester, though she could not yet imagine how completely those answers would transform her understanding of her place in her father's legacy. That evening, Jennifer Clark stood at the kitchen sink washing dishes from their simple dinner, her movements mechanical as her mind processed the phone call she had received from Evelyn Phillips an hour earlier. The older woman's report about the cafeteria confrontation had filled Jennifer with a complex mixture of pride in her daughter's courage and concern about the increased attention that Anna's public defense of her father's memory would inevitably bring. The trailer felt smaller than usual as Jennifer wrestled with decisions that would affect not only Anna's immediate school experience, but also her long-term relationship with her father's legacy. For 5 years, Jennifer had carefully managed the balance between honoring Matthew's memory and protecting Anna from the complexities of his classified service. But recent events were forcing that balance toward a reckoning she had hoped to postpone until Anna was older. Anna sat at the kitchen table with her homework spread before her. Though her attention wandered frequently to the formal military portrait that held its place of honor on the nearby wall, the photograph seemed different somehow after the day's events. Less like a memorial to someone distant and more like evidence of a connection she was finally beginning to understand and claim as her own. "Mom," Anna said quietly, her voice carrying the particular tone that children used when approaching subjects they knew were difficult for adults. "Can you tell me more about what Dad actually did in the Navy?" Jennifer set down the plate she had been washing and turned to face her daughter, recognizing that the question represented a new level of readiness to engage with information she had been protecting Anna from learning too early. The events at school had accelerated a conversation that Jennifer had always known would eventually be necessary. "What would you like to know?" Jennifer asked, settling into the chair across from Anna with the careful manner of someone navigating potentially dangerous emotional territory. "The kids at school say that if he was really a hero, we would have more money and better things," Anna replied, her words reflecting the cruel logic that her classmates had used to undermine her family's credibility. "They say real military heroes get taken care of by the government." Jennifer felt a surge of anger at the children who had planted these doubts in her daughter's mind, though she recognized that their misconceptions reflected broader societal assumptions about military service and its rewards. The reality of military families, particularly those who had lost service members in classified operations, was far more complex than popular culture suggested. "Your father's death benefits were affected by the classified nature of his final mission," Jennifer explained, choosing her words carefully to provide truth without overwhelming Anna with information she wasn't ready to process. When operations are secret, sometimes the families don't receive the same recognition or support that families of soldiers who die in public battles receive. Anna absorbed this information with the serious attention she brought to anything connected to her father's service, though the concept of being penalized for secrecy added new layers to her understanding of military sacrifice. "Is that why you work so many hours at the diner?" Anna asked, her question revealing an awareness of their family's financial struggles that Jennifer had hoped to shield her from. Partly, Jennifer admitted, recognizing that honesty about their circumstances was necessary for Anna to understand her place in her father's story. "Military death benefits help, but they don't replace a full income, and some of the benefits we should receive are tied up in bureaucracy because your father's records are classified." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car pulling into their driveway, followed by the distinctive rumble of a diesel engine that suggested a larger vehicle than typically visited their neighborhood. Through the window, Jennifer could see a military staff car with government plates, its presence immediately elevating the significance of whatever business had brought it to Pine Ridge Trailer Park. 2 figures emerged from the vehicle, a woman in army dress uniform with captain's bars visible on her shoulders, and a man in civilian clothes whose bearing and haircut suggested military background, despite his lack of uniform. Their approach to the trailer's front steps was purposeful but respectful, the kind of official visit that could signal either recognition or investigation. Jennifer opened the door before they could knock, her maternal instincts automatically assessing whether these visitors represented opportunity or threat for her family. "Mrs. Clark," the female officer asked, her voice carrying the professional courtesy that characterized military personnel conducting official business. "I'm Captain Jessica Torres from Fort Campbell Public Affairs, and this is Staff Sergeant Dan Green from our recruiting station. We'd like to speak with you about your daughter Anna and Friday's Veterans Day Assembly." Jennifer stepped aside to allow them to enter, her mind racing through possibilities for why high-ranking military personnel would visit their home in connection with a school assembly. Anna looked up from her homework with wide eyes, recognizing that the arrival of uniformed soldiers represented a significant escalation in the events surrounding her father's service. Captain Torres was a compact woman in her early 30s whose professional demeanor suggested experience in handling sensitive communications between military institutions and civilian communities. Her dress uniform was perfectly pressed, every detail regulation perfect, creating an immediate impression of competence and authority that commanded respect in their modest living space. Staff Sergeant Green appeared to be in his late 30s, his civilian clothes unable to completely disguise the military bearing that marked him as someone accustomed to discipline and precision. His presence alongside Captain Torres suggested that Anna's situation had attracted attention at multiple levels within the Fort Campbell command structure. "Please have a seat," Jennifer offered, gesturing toward their small living room. While trying to process the surreal nature of having uniformed military personnel in her trailer discussing her 10-year-old daughter, Captain Torres settled into the offered chair with practiced ease, her trained eye taking in the details of their living space with the kind of assessment that public affairs officers developed for understanding family situations. The military photographs, the careful cleanliness despite obvious financial constraints, and Anna's respectful attention all contributed to her evaluation of the Clark family's circumstances. "We understand that Anna has been experiencing some difficulties at school related to wearing her father's military jacket." Captain Torres began, her voice carrying the diplomatic tone that characterized official military communications with civilian families. "Some of the children have been questioning whether her father actually served," Jennifer replied, her protective instincts engaging as she prepared to defend both Anna and Matthew's memory against any suggestion of impropriety. Staff Sergeant Green leaned forward slightly, his expression conveying both understanding and professional interest in the family situation. "Mrs. Clark, we've reviewed Master Chief Clark's service record, and I want you to know that his reputation within the special operations community was exemplary. The validation from someone with direct military authority carried weight that civilian reassurance could not match, providing Anna with the first official confirmation of her father's character from people whose opinions mattered within the military hierarchy. The reason for our visit," Captain Torres continued, "is that General Carter specifically requested a briefing on military families in the community before Friday's assembly. When your daughter's situation came to our attention, the General asked us to verify the details of her father's service." Anna's attention sharpened at the mention of General Carter, the same four-star general whose upcoming visit had been announced at school that afternoon. The possibility that such an important figure was personally interested in her family's circumstances seemed almost impossible to believe. General Carter served in Afghanistan during the same period as her husband, Staff Sergeant Green explained, his voice taking on the reverent tone that military personnel used when discussing classified operations. While I can't share specific details, I can tell you that the general has personal knowledge of Master Chief Clark's final mission. Jennifer felt her breath catch at this unexpected connection between her late husband and the general who would be speaking at Anna's school assembly. The possibility that someone with direct knowledge of Matthew's death would be present on Friday created opportunities for recognition that she had never dared to hope for. "Does that mean he knew my dad?" Anna asked, her voice small but clear, as she tried to understand the implications of what she was hearing. Captain Torres and Staff Sergeant Green exchanged glances, their silent communication suggesting they were navigating classified information that limited what they could share with the family. "General Carter was aware of your father's work," Captain Torres replied carefully, "and he has great respect for the sacrifice that your family has made." The conversation continued as the military visitors provided context for Friday's assembly that transformed Anna's understanding of what the event might mean for her family. Rather than a routine patriotic program, the assembly was beginning to take on the character of a potential recognition ceremony for military families whose service had previously gone unacknowledged. "We want to ensure that Anna feels prepared for Friday," Staff Sergeant Green said, his voice carrying the protective tone that military personnel often used when discussing service members' children. "There may be questions from other students or adults who don't understand the nature of classified military service." Jennifer appreciated the consideration for Anna's emotional well-being, recognizing that these experienced military personnel understood the complexities of managing public recognition for families connected to secret operations. "What should I tell people who ask about Dad's service?" Anna asked, her practical 10-year-old mind immediately focusing on the challenges she would face in defending her father's memory with limited information. "You tell them exactly what you know," Captain Torres replied firmly. "That your father was Master Chief Petty Officer Matthew Clark, that he served his country with honor for 12 years, and that he died in service to the United States. You don't need to provide details that you don't have, and you don't need to justify his service to anyone." The advice provided Anna with a framework for responding to future challenges while maintaining the dignity that had characterized her behavior throughout the semester. The official validation of her father's service gave her new confidence in defending his memory against those who questioned his importance or her right to honor his sacrifice. As the military visitors prepared to leave, Captain Torres turned to address Anna directly, her voice taking on the personal tone that transcended official business. "Anna, I want you to know that military children often carry burdens that other kids don't understand." She said, "Your father's service required sacrifices from your entire family, and that includes the sacrifices you're making now by defending his memory. That takes courage, and courage is something the military values highly." The recognition of Anna's own role in honoring her father's legacy provided her with a new perspective on the challenges she had been facing at school. Rather than simply enduring harassment, she was actively participating in preserving the memory of someone whose service had contributed to national security in ways that most people would never know or understand. After the visitors departed, leaving their business cards and assurances of continued support, Jennifer and Anna sat together in the kitchen, processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. The involvement of high-ranking military personnel in Anna's school situation had elevated their family circumstances beyond anything Jennifer had imagined possible. "Are you scared about Friday?" Jennifer asked, recognizing that the upcoming assembly now carried implications that went far beyond routine school activities. Anna considered the question carefully, weighing her anxieties about increased attention against her growing understanding of her father's importance and her own role in preserving his memory. A little, she admitted, but also excited. Maybe people will finally understand about Dad. Jennifer reached across the table to take her daughter's hand, feeling the calluses that marked Anna's practical approach to life while marveling at the strength that her 10-year-old was demonstrating in circumstances that would challenge many adults. "Whatever happens on Friday," Jennifer said quietly, "your father would be proud of how you've handled everything this week. You've shown the same kind of courage that made him a good soldier." Anna smiled at the comparison, understanding for the first time that her own behavior was connected to the military values that had shaped her father's character. The realization that she was carrying forward his legacy through her actions gave new meaning to the challenges she had been facing, and new purpose to the upcoming assembly that would determine how her community chose to remember and honor his sacrifice. Outside their window, the lights of Fort Campbell glowed in the distance, a reminder of the military community that had finally recognized their connection to something larger than their modest circumstances in Pine Ridge Trailer Park. Friday's assembly would bring answers to questions that had haunted Anna throughout the semester, though neither she nor her mother could yet imagine how completely those answers would transform their understanding of their place in Matthew Clark's continuing legacy. Thursday dawned crisp and clear over Riverside Glen, the kind of autumn morning that painted the Tennessee hills in brilliant oranges and reds, while carrying the promise of winter in its cool breeze. Ed awoke earlier than usual, her internal clock disrupted by the anticipation that had been building since the military visitor's departure the previous evening. She lay in her narrow bed for several minutes, listening to the familiar sounds of the trailer park coming to life around her, while mentally rehearsing responses to the questions and comments that Friday's assembly was certain to generate. Jennifer had already left for her early shift at the diner, but she had laid out Anna's clothes with unusual care, including a note tucked into the pocket of her father's jacket that simply read, "Daddy would be proud. I love you." The small gesture carried weight that helped Anna prepare emotionally for what would likely be her most challenging day at Riverside Glenn Elementary. The school building buzzed with unusual energy as Anna arrived. Maintenance crews and custodial staff working to prepare the gymnasium for the next day's assembly, while students and faculty alike seemed infected by the heightened attention that a four-star general's visit brought to their small community. American flags had appeared overnight in classroom windows, and patriotic decorations transformed the normally plain hallways into something approaching a shrine to military service. Anna navigated through the preparations with her characteristic, quiet observation, noting how teachers spoke in hushed, excited tones about the logistics of hosting such an important visitor. Principal Collins appeared everywhere at once, his usual administrative calm replaced by the nervous energy of someone responsible for ensuring that every detail met standards appropriate for entertaining military royalty. In Mrs. Hughes's classroom, the morning lesson plan had been modified to include discussions about Veterans Day and military service, a shift that placed Anna's family circumstances squarely within the academic curriculum for the first time since the semester began. The teacher's approach was well-intentioned, but created exactly the kind of focused attention that Anna had spent months trying to avoid. "Who can tell me what we know about the different branches of military service?" Mrs. Hughes asked her question aimed at generating classroom participation while providing educational context for the next day's assembly. Several students raised their hands enthusiastically, eager to demonstrate their knowledge of military hierarchy and organization. Chase Porter's hand shot up first, his confidence in his father's defense contracting background, making him feel qualified to speak authoritatively about military matters. "The Army is the biggest branch," Chase announced when called upon, "and they handle most of the fighting on land. My dad works with Army people all the time." "That's correct," Mrs. Hughes acknowledged before directing her attention across the classroom. "Anna, would you like to share what branch your father served in?" The direct question placed Anna at the center of classroom attention in a way that felt both validating and terrifying. Every eye focused on her as she prepared to speak about her father's service in an academic context for the first time. "Navy," Anna replied clearly, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of discussing her father in front of classmates who had questioned his existence. "He was a master, chief, petty officer." Tiffany Reed's expression tightened at this public acknowledgement of Anna's military connection, the official classroom setting making it more difficult to dismiss or mock her claims. The presence of educational authority behind Anna's statement created a different dynamic than the confrontational atmosphere of the cafeteria. "Master Chief is a very high rank in the Navy," Mrs. Hughes observed, her tone carrying respect that Anna had rarely heard from school personnel when discussing her family. "That represents many years of dedicated service?" Ethan Scott beamed with pride at his friend's recognition. His loyalty, finding validation in the teacher's acknowledgement of Anna's father's importance. The classroom dynamic shifted subtly as other students processed this official confirmation of information they had previously been encouraged to doubt. "What kind of work did Navy people do?" asked a fourth grader named Jaime, her question genuine curiosity rather than challenge or mockery. Anna hesitated, aware that her knowledge of her father's specific duties remained limited by classification restrictions that even the previous evening's military visitors had been unable to fully explain. "He worked with special teams that helped protect other soldiers and civilians," Anna replied carefully, using language that honored her father's service without claiming knowledge she didn't possess. Mrs. Hughes nodded approvingly at Anna's measured response, recognizing wisdom beyond her years in the girl's careful handling of potentially sensitive information. The teacher's professional experience had taught her to respect the boundaries that military families often maintained around operational details. During recess, the unusual atmosphere continued as students clustered in groups to discuss the next day's assembly and speculate about what a four-star general might say to their small school community. Anna found herself the reluctant center of attention as classmates who had previously ignored her sought information about military life and service. "Is it true that your dad knew the general who's coming tomorrow?" asked a third grader named Marcus, his question reflecting the kind of playground speculation that had been circulating since the previous day's announcement. "I don't know," Anna replied honestly, though the previous evening's conversation with Captain Torres and Staff Sergeant Green had suggested connections she wasn't fully authorized to discuss. The honest uncertainty in Anna's response carried more credibility than elaborate claims might have, demonstrating the thoughtful approach to truth that characterized her handling of complex family circumstances. Other students began to recognize that Anna's quiet dignity reflected genuine respect for her father's memory rather than evasion or deception. Tiffany Reed watched these interactions from across the playground with growing frustration. Her social dominance threatened by Anna's emerging credibility within the student community. The approaching assembly represented a potential complete reversal of the dynamics that had allowed Tiffany to maintain her position through mockery and exclusion. "Just because teachers believe her stories doesn't make them true," Tiffany muttered to her closest followers, her voice carrying the defensive tone of someone whose worldview was being challenged by inconvenient evidence. Chase Porter nodded agreement, though his conviction seemed less solid than it had earlier in the week. The involvement of high-ranking military personnel in Anna's situation had introduced variables that his father's defense contracting experience hadn't prepared him to understand or dismiss. As the morning progressed toward lunch period, Anna became aware of increased adult attention focused on her presence and behavior. Teachers who had previously viewed her as simply another quiet student now seemed to observe her with the careful interest reserved for children connected to important events. Evelyn Phillips appeared in the hallway outside Mrs. Hughes's classroom during the transition between subjects, her presence suggesting coordination with school administration that went beyond routine volunteer activities. She caught Anna's eye and offered a small smile that conveyed both encouragement and the promise of continued support. "Anna," Evelyn said quietly as students moved past them toward their next destinations, "could I speak with you for a moment?" Anna approached the older woman with the respectful attention she showed all adults, though her expression carried curiosity about what private conversation might be necessary. "I wanted you to know that several people have been working to make sure tomorrow's assembly honors military families appropriately," Evelyn said, her voice pitched low enough to maintain privacy while conveying important information. General Carter specifically requested that military children be recognized for the sacrifices they make alongside their parents. The revelation that Anna might be publicly acknowledged during the assembly created a mixture of excitement and anxiety that left her momentarily speechless. The prospect of having her family service recognized officially represented everything she had hoped for, while simultaneously terrifying her with its implications for increased visibility. Will other people be there besides students and teachers? Anna asked, her practical mind immediately focusing on the scope of audience that might witness her recognition. "Some community members, local officials, and media representatives," Evelyn replied honestly. "General Carter's visit is significant enough to attract regional attention." Anna absorbed this information while calculating the implications for her family's privacy and her own future interactions with classmates and community members. Recognition at such a public level would permanently alter how people in Riverside Glen viewed her family's circumstances. The lunch period proceeded with continued elevated attention focused on Anna's presence. Though the atmosphere was markedly different from the previous day's confrontational energy, students who approached her table now seemed motivated by genuine curiosity rather than challenges to her credibility, creating opportunities for normal social interaction that had been absent throughout the semester. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" Ethan asked as they shared their usual table near the windows, his question reflecting concern for his friend's emotional well-being rather than curiosity about the event itself. Yes, Anna admitted, appreciating the opportunity to acknowledge her anxiety to someone who wouldn't judge her for it, but also excited. Maybe people will finally understand. During the afternoon's final class period, Principal Collins appeared in Mrs. Hughes's classroom with the kind of official demeanor that indicated important administrative business was about to be conducted. "Students," Principal Collins announced, his voice carrying the formal tone reserved for significant communications. "Tomorrow's Veterans Day Assembly will begin promptly at 10 hours in the gymnasium. We expect perfect behavior and respectful attention throughout the program." Anna felt her stomach tighten as the reality of the next day's events became more concrete with each administrative detail. The careful preparation and elevated expectations suggested that her family's connection to the assembly had created pressure for performance that extended beyond simple patriotic observance. "General Carter will be accompanied by several other military personnel," Principal Collins continued, "and there will be media present to document this historic visit to our school community." The mention of media presence added another layer of complexity to Anna's emotional preparation, understanding that whatever happened during the assembly might be preserved and broadcast beyond the immediate school community. As the final bell rang and students began gathering their belongings for dismissal, Anna moved through her routine with unusual deliberation, aware that the next time she entered this building, everything about her circumstances might be permanently changed. Mrs. Hughes approached Anna's desk as other students filed toward the exit, her expression carrying the kind of personal interest that teachers reserved for students they believed were facing significant challenges. "Anna," Mrs. Hughes said quietly, "I want you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, you should be proud of how you've conducted yourself this semester. You've shown maturity and dignity that would make any parent proud." The unexpected recognition from a teacher who had previously seemed indifferent to her circumstances provided Anna with additional confidence for facing the next day's challenges. The acknowledgement that her behavior had been noticed and appreciated by adult authority figures helped validate her approach to handling difficult social situations. As Anna walked home through the afternoon sunshine, her mind occupied with thoughts of the next day's assembly and its potential implications for her family's future in Riverside Glen, she became aware of increased activity around the school building. Military vehicles had begun arriving for preliminary setup, their presence transforming the familiar landscape of her daily routine into something that felt both exciting and intimidating. The trailer park seemed quieter than usual as Anna approached home, though she noticed several neighbors gathered in small groups, discussing the unusual military presence that had visited the previous evening. The attention focused on her family created a new dynamic within their community that would require careful navigation regardless of what tomorrow's assembly revealed. Inside trailer number 47, Anna found a message from her mother explaining that Jennifer would be working a double shift to ensure Friday morning would be free for the assembly. The practical necessity of maximizing income opportunities competed with the emotional significance of the approaching event, creating the kind of complex choices that characterized military family life even years after service had ended. Anna settled at the kitchen table with her homework, though her concentration wandered frequently to thoughts of General Carter and the possibility that someone with direct knowledge of her father's service would finally provide the recognition and validation she had been seeking throughout months of doubt and harassment. The evening passed slowly as Anna prepared both academically and emotionally for what promised to be the most significant day of her young life. While outside her window, the lights of Fort Campbell glowed in the distance like a beacon, connecting her to the military community that had finally acknowledged her place within the continuing legacy of Master Chief Petty Officer Matthew Clark's service and sacrifice. Friday morning arrived with the kind of electric anticipation that transformed ordinary school days into events that would be remembered for years to come. Anna woke before her alarm, her body responding to the nervous energy that had been building throughout the week, while her mind raced through potential scenarios for the morning's assembly. The familiar comfort of her father's jacket hanging on the bedroom chair seemed different somehow, more significant, as if the faded fabric had absorbed the weight of approaching recognition. Jennifer had returned home after midnight from her double shift, leaving a breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast warming in the oven alongside another encouraging note that reminded Anna of her father's courage and her own strength. The practical care wrapped in emotional support represented everything that defined their relationship. Love expressed through small gestures that acknowledged both their limitations and their determination to honor Matthew's memory. The walk to school carried unusual weight as Anna moved through the familiar neighborhood streets that seemed transformed by the morning's possibilities. Military vehicles lined the school parking lot, their olive green paint and official markings, creating an atmosphere of importance that elevated the entire community's awareness of the day's significance. Television news vans from regional stations had arrived early to secure optimal positions for documenting the visit of a four-star general to a small Tennessee school. Anna approached the building entrance with measured steps, her father's jacket worn with newfound confidence, despite the butterflies that filled her stomach with each forward movement. The very garment that had attracted months of mockery and suspicion now felt like armor, protecting her connection to a legacy that was finally approaching public acknowledgement. Principal Collins stood near the main entrance, directing traffic and coordinating with military personnel, whose presence had elevated his routine administrative duties to the level of protocol management. His nervous energy was palpable as he juggled security requirements, media logistics, and the educational mission that was supposed to remain the primary focus of the day's activities. "Anna?" Principal Collins called as she approached the entrance, his voice carrying unusual warmth as he acknowledged someone who had become central to the day's proceedings. "I'm glad you're here early. There are some people who would like to meet you before the assembly begins." Anna nodded politely while internally processing the implications of pre-assembly meetings that suggested her role in the day's events would extend beyond simple attendance. The transformation from invisible student to recognized participant represented everything she had hoped for while simultaneously challenging her comfort with remaining unnoticed. Inside the building, the gymnasium had been transformed into something approaching a military ceremony venue with rows of folding chairs arranged in perfect formation, facing a speaker podium flanked by American flags and military standards. The casual atmosphere of routine school assemblies had been replaced by formal protocol that demanded respectful behavior and serious attention from all participants. Captain Torres appeared at Anna's side with the punctual efficiency that characterized all her interactions. Her presence providing both official validation and personal reassurance as the morning's events began to unfold with military precision. "Anna, I'd like you to meet some additional personnel who will be participating in today's program," Captain Torres said, gesturing toward a small group of uniformed officers who had been conferring near the gymnasium entrance. Among them stood a tall man, whose bearing and insignia immediately commanded attention, even from someone with Anna's limited knowledge of military hierarchy. Colonel Paul Newman's presence added another layer of authority to the morning's proceedings, while his gentle expression suggested understanding of the emotional complexity that military recognition could create for service members' families. "Miss Clark," Colonel Newman said, extending his hand with the respectful formality that military personnel used when acknowledging the families of fallen comrades. "It's an honor to meet Master Chief Clark's daughter. Your father's reputation within the special operations community was exceptional. The validation from yet another high-ranking officer provided Anna with additional confidence while reinforcing her understanding that her father's service had been genuinely significant rather than routine military duty. Each new confirmation from military authority figures strengthened her position against those who had questioned her family's legitimacy. General Carter is looking forward to meeting you," Colonel Newman continued, his voice carrying the weight of official approval that transformed Anna's anticipated recognition from possibility into certainty. He specifically requested time to speak with military families before the formal program begins. The mention of General Carter's personal interest in meeting her created a surge of nervous excitement that left Anna momentarily speechless. The prospect of facing someone with direct knowledge of her father's final mission represented both the ultimate validation of his service and a potential source of information about circumstances that had remained mysterious throughout her childhood. As they moved through the building toward a conference room that had been designated for pre-assembly meetings, Anna became aware of increased attention from students and faculty, who recognized that her presence among military personnel indicated something significant about her connection to the day's events. The whispered conversations and curious glances created an atmosphere of anticipation that extended beyond simple interest in a visiting dignitary. Tiffany Reed stood with a group of 7th graders near the gymnasium entrance, her expression revealing the uncomfortable realization that Anna's claims about military connections were being validated by the very authorities whose presence had been arranged to honor service and sacrifice. The cognitive dissonance between her previous mockery and the current evidence of Anna's legitimacy created visible tension in her confident demeanor. Chase Porter appeared equally unsettled as he observed Anna's interactions with high-ranking military personnel, his father's defense contracting connections suddenly seeming less impressive when compared to direct family relationships with classified special operations. The reversal of social dynamics that had favored his position throughout the semester was becoming impossible to ignore or dismiss. The conference room designated for family meetings had been arranged with careful attention to creating an atmosphere of respect and recognition for military sacrifice. Photographs of local service members lined the walls, while flags and ceremonial items created a shrine-like setting that honored the broader community of military families. Jennifer Clark sat in one of the arranged chairs, her work uniform replaced by her best dress, and a composure that reflected both pride in her daughter's courage and anxiety about the public attention that recognition would inevitably bring. Her presence provided Anna with the emotional anchor necessary for navigating the overwhelming experience of official military acknowledgement. "Mrs. Clark," Colonel Newman said, approaching Jennifer with the same respectful formality he had shown Anna. "Thank you for allowing us to honor your family sacrifice today. Master Chief Clark's service deserves recognition, and Anna's courage in defending his memory has been inspiring to witness. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears at this official acknowledgement of both Matthew's service and Anna's strength. The validation she had sought for 5 years, finally arriving through the military community that understood the true cost of classified operations and family sacrifice. The conference room door opened with military precision, and the atmosphere immediately shifted to one of formal respect as General John Storm Carter entered with the commanding presence that had earned him 4 stars and the respect of soldiers throughout multiple combat deployments. At 58, he possessed the kind of weathered authority that came from decades of military leadership combined with personal experience of the sacrifices that service demanded from families as well as soldiers. Anna felt her breath catch as she faced the man who represented the highest level of military recognition she could imagine. His presence transforming her father's memory from family treasure into officially acknowledged national service. The general's eyes immediately focused on the jacket she wore, his expression shifting from formal courtesy to something deeper as he recognized insignia that carried personal significance. Master Chief Clark's daughter, General Carter, said, his voice carrying the particular tone that military leaders used when addressing the families of fallen heroes. "I've been looking forward to meeting you, Anna." The general's gaze remained fixed on the faded patch above Anna's heart, his expression revealing recognition that went beyond simple identification of military insignia. The intensity of his attention suggested personal knowledge of the unit and mission that the patch represented, creating an atmosphere of shared understanding that transcended words. "That's a very special jacket you're wearing," General Carter continued, his voice taking on the reverent tone that military personnel used when discussing classified operations. "Your father earned the right to wear that patch through service that few people will ever fully understand." Anna found her voice despite the overwhelming nature of facing someone whose authority represented everything she had hoped for in terms of validating her father's legacy. "Thank you, sir. My mom says he was proud to serve. He had every right to be proud," General Carter replied firmly, his statement carrying the weight of personal knowledge and official recognition. "And you should be proud to carry on his legacy." The general turned to address the assembled military personnel and family members, his bearing shifting to the formal mode that characterized official recognition ceremonies. "What we're about to do in that gymnasium," General Carter said, his voice carrying across the conference room with command authority, "is long overdue. Master Chief Matthew Clark died serving his country in operations that required the ultimate sacrifice while remaining classified for reasons of national security. His family has carried that burden without recognition for too long." Jennifer felt her composure threaten to break as she realized that the recognition she had never dared to hope for was about to become reality. Her husband's service finally receiving the acknowledgement that classified operations typically prevented families from receiving. "Anna," General Carter said, focusing his attention on the 10-year-old who had become the center of the morning's events. "In a few minutes, we're going to walk into that gymnasium where your classmates and community will learn something about the true meaning of military service and family sacrifice." The weight of approaching public recognition settled over Anna like a mantle. The responsibility of representing her father's memory in front of people who had questioned his existence, creating both excitement and overwhelming pressure. "Are you ready to help me teach them about courage?" General Carter asked, extending his hand toward Anna with the respectful invitation that military leaders offered to those whose service deserved recognition. Anna looked at her mother, seeking final reassurance for stepping into a level of visibility that would permanently alter how their community viewed their family's circumstances. Jennifer's encouraging nod provided the confirmation necessary for accepting the recognition that Matthew's service had earned. "Yes, sir," Anna replied, placing her small hand in the general's larger one, while feeling the weight of her father's legacy transferring from private memory to public honor. As they prepared to leave the conference room for the gymnasium, where hundreds of students, faculty, community members, and media representatives waited to witness whatever revelation the morning would bring, Anna felt the transformation from invisible school child to honored military daughter, completing itself with each step toward the doors that would open onto her father's long-awaited recognition. The hallway outside buzzed with a controlled energy that preceded significant events. Military personnel coordinating final details while school staff managed logistics for hosting the most important visitor in their institution's history. Through the gymnasium doors, Anna could hear the murmur of assembled voices that would soon focus their attention on learning the truth about the quiet girl they had chosen to mock, and the father whose service had protected freedoms they had never thought to question. General Carter's presence beside her provided strength for facing whatever challenges public recognition might bring, while the weight of her father's jacket reminded her that she carried forward a legacy worthy of the courage that its acknowledgement would require. The gymnasium doors opened with ceremonial precision as the military procession entered the packed auditorium. General Carter leading the way with Anna walking beside him in a moment that would forever change how Riverside Glenn Elementary understood the meaning of honor and sacrifice. The assembled crowd fell silent as they witnessed the unprecedented sight of a 4-star general escorting a 10-year-old student across the polished floor toward the speaker's podium. Anna's legs felt unsteady beneath her as she took in the magnitude of the assembled audience. Hundreds of faces turned toward her, with expressions ranging from curiosity to confusion to dawning recognition. Students who had mocked her jacket now sat in rigid silence, their earlier certainty about her family circumstances beginning to crumble under the weight of official military attention. The media representatives positioned throughout the gymnasium focused their cameras on the unusual pair. Recognizing that whatever story was about to unfold involved more than routine Veterans Day observance, the presence of such high-ranking military personnel at a small-town school assembly suggested significance that extended beyond educational protocol into matters of genuine historical importance. Principal Collins stood at the podium with barely contained nervousness, his prepared remarks suddenly seeming inadequate for introducing events that had evolved far beyond his initial planning. The transformation of a routine assembly into what appeared to be an official military recognition ceremony had challenged every assumption about appropriate programming for elementary school students. Ladies and gentlemen, students and faculty, Principal Collins began, his voice carrying across the silent gymnasium with unusual formality. It is my extraordinary honor to introduce General John Carter, United States Army, who has come to speak with us about military service and sacrifice. General Carter approached the podium with a confident stride that had carried him through decades of military leadership. his bearing commanding immediate respect from an audience that had never before encountered such elevated authority in their small community. Anna remained beside him, her father's jacket now the focus of hundreds of curious eyes that were beginning to understand its significance. "Thank you, Principal Collins," General Carter said, his voice carrying the clear authority that filled every corner of the gymnasium without apparent effort. Before I begin my prepared remarks about Veterans Day, there's something more important I need to address with your school community. The deviation from expected programming created a stir of anticipation throughout the audience, students and adults alike, recognizing that they were about to witness something unplanned and potentially historic. 3 days ago, General Carter continued, "I was informed about a situation at your school involving a young girl who was being mocked and harassed for wearing what some people assumed was a fake military jacket." Tiffany Reed felt her stomach drop as she realized the general's speech was going to focus directly on her treatment of Anna. The public nature of the venue, making escape or denial impossible. Around her, classmates who had participated in or witnessed the harassment began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Chase Porter's face drained of color as he understood that his accusations of stolen valor were about to be addressed by the highest military authority he had ever encountered. His father's defense contracting connections suddenly seeming insignificant compared to direct, personal knowledge of classified operations. "That young girl is Anna Clark," General Carter said, placing his hand gently on Anna's shoulder with the protective gesture that senior military officers used when defending the families of fallen comrades. "And this jacket belonged to her father, Master Chief Petty Officer Matthew Clark, United States Navy." The formal introduction of Anna's father created a ripple of recognition throughout the audience as people began to process the implications of official military validation for claims they had been encouraged to doubt. Master Chief Clark served with distinction in some of our nation's most dangerous and classified special operations. General Carter continued, his voice taking on the reverent tone that military personnel used when discussing fallen heroes. "I had the privilege of knowing Matthew Clark personally, and I can tell you that he represented the very best of American military service." Jennifer Clark sat in the front row with tears streaming down her face, the public recognition of her husband's service, fulfilling dreams she had carried for 5 years while watching her daughter face doubt and harassment for honoring his memory. On September 15, 2018, General Carter said, his voice carrying across the silent gymnasium with the weight of classified information being declassified for public acknowledgement. Master Chief Clark died while leading a rescue mission in Afghanistan that saved the lives of 12 American personnel, including myself. The revelation that General Carter owed his life to Anna's father transformed the entire dynamic of the assembly, creating a personal connection that elevated Matthew Clark's service from abstract military duty to direct heroism with visible consequences. Anna felt her knees threaten to buckle as she heard the specific details of her father's death revealed publicly for the first time. The classified nature of his final mission finally being acknowledged in a way that provided both closure and validation for questions that had haunted her throughout her childhood. The mission was classified at the highest levels, General Carter continued, which meant that Matthew's family could not receive the public recognition that his sacrifice deserved. His widow and daughter have carried the burden of his service in silence, honoring his memory without being able to share the full truth of his heroism. Mrs. Hughes felt profound shame wash over her as she realized how completely she had misjudged Anna's circumstances, her assumptions about the family's economic status blinding her to the military legacy that deserved respect rather than lowered expectations. "This jacket that Anna wears," General Carter said, gesturing toward the faded garment that had attracted so much negative attention, "bears the patch of Naval Special Warfare Development Group, one of our nation's most elite military units. Master Chief Clark earned the right to wear this patch through service that required extraordinary courage and sacrifice. The official identification of the patch silenced any remaining doubt about Anna's legitimacy, providing definitive proof that the harassment she had endured was based on ignorance rather than truth. Anna has worn her father's jacket to school every day, not to seek attention or claim false honor," General Carter continued, "but because it represents her connection to a hero whose service protected the freedoms that allow all of us to gather safely in places like this gymnasium." Evelyn Phillips watched from her position among the school volunteers with profound satisfaction, her efforts to ensure Anna received appropriate recognition finally bearing fruit through the intervention of military authority that could not be questioned or dismissed. "The children who mocked Anna for wearing this jacket," General Carter said, his tone becoming more stern as he addressed the harassment directly, "were insulting the memory of a man who died serving his country. They were attacking a military family that has already sacrificed more than most people will ever be asked to give." The public rebuke created an atmosphere of accountability throughout the gymnasium as students who had participated in or witnessed Anna's harassment faced the reality that their behavior had been directed against someone whose family had served with genuine heroism. But Anna's response to this treatment, General Carter continued, his voice returning to the admiring tone he used when discussing courage under pressure, has been exemplary. She has defended her father's memory with dignity and grace, never seeking revenge or responding with cruelty to those who doubted her. The recognition of Anna's own behavior provided validation for the strength she had demonstrated throughout months of harassment, acknowledging that her response to adversity had itself been worthy of military values. "Anna Clark," General Carter said, turning to address her directly while the assembled audience listened in complete silence, "you have honored your father's legacy through your courage and integrity. Master Chief Clark would be proud of the young woman you are becoming." Anna felt tears beginning to form in her eyes as she experienced the validation she had sought throughout the semester. The official recognition of both her father's service and her own character providing emotional fulfillment that transformed months of pain into triumph. "I would now like to present Anna with something that should have been given to her family years ago." General Carter announced, producing a small wooden box from his uniform jacket with ceremonial precision. The mystery of what official recognition Anna's family would receive created anticipation throughout the gymnasium as the audience witnessed what appeared to be an unprecedented ceremony honoring a military family sacrifice. General Carter opened the box to reveal a medal that gleamed under the gymnasium's lights, its significance immediately apparent to anyone familiar with military decorations. The Bronze Star Medal with Valor represented one of the highest honors that could be awarded for combat heroism, its presence indicating that Matthew Clark's final mission had been deemed worthy of extraordinary recognition. This Bronze Star Medal with Valor was awarded posthumously to Master Chief Matthew Clark for heroic achievement in connection with combat operations against an armed enemy. General Carter announced, his voice carrying the formal language of military citation, while his expression conveyed personal respect for the recipient's sacrifice. The revelation that Anna's father had been awarded such a prestigious decoration silenced any remaining question about the legitimacy of his service or the importance of his final mission, providing undeniable proof of heroism that elevated him beyond routine military duty. "Anna, this medal belongs to you and your mother," General Carter said, extending the box toward her with the ceremonial gravity that characterized official military presentations. "It represents your father's courage and the nation's gratitude for his ultimate sacrifice." Anne accepted the medal with trembling hands, her small fingers closing around the wooden box that contained tangible proof of her father's heroism and the validation she had sought throughout months of doubt and harassment. "This medal will never bring your father back," General Carter continued gently, "but it represents the truth about his service and the honor that your family deserves to receive from a grateful nation." The emotional weight of the ceremony created a profound silence throughout the gymnasium as hundreds of people processed the magnitude of what they had witnessed. The transformation of routine Veterans Day observance into genuine recognition of military sacrifice and family strength. "Before I conclude," General Carter said, his attention turning toward the students who had participated in Anna's harassment, "I want to address those of you who questioned Anna's honesty about her father's service." Tiffany Reed felt her heart racing as she realized the general was preparing to speak directly about her behavior. The public nature of the venue making her previous cruelty impossible to hide or minimize. "Military families often carry burdens that civilian families cannot understand," General Carter continued, his voice taking on the educational tone that senior officers used when teaching important lessons. "The children of service members frequently face challenges that their classmates never encounter, including the responsibility of honoring parents who served in ways that cannot always be publicly acknowledged." The lesson about military family experiences provided context that helped the audience understand Anna's circumstances while highlighting the ignorance that had motivated her harassment. When you mock a military child for wearing their parents' uniform or insignia, General Carter concluded firmly, "You are not just attacking an individual student. You are dishonoring the service and sacrifice that protects the very freedoms you enjoy every day." The moral instruction carried the weight of ultimate authority, providing education about military respect that would influence how the Riverside Glenn community treated military families for years to come. As the general's words settled over the silent gymnasium, Anna stood beside him, holding her father's medal, while feeling the complete transformation from outcast to honored military daughter. Her father's legacy finally receiving the recognition that his classified service had prevented during his lifetime. The aftermath of General Carter's revelation rippled through the gymnasium like a stone dropped into still water, creating waves of understanding and remorse that reached every corner of the assembled community. As the formal ceremony concluded and people began to process what they had witnessed, the social dynamics that had defined Riverside Glenn Elementary for months underwent a fundamental transformation that would reshape relationships for years to come. Anna remained near the podium as students and faculty approached with expressions ranging from admiration to profound embarrassment. The Bronze Star Medal clutched in her hands, serving as tangible proof of everything she had tried to tell them about her father's service. The weight of official recognition felt both liberating and overwhelming as she navigated the sudden shift from invisibility to being the center of respectful attention. Tiffany Reed sat frozen in her chair as classmates around her whispered about the magnitude of her misjudgment. The social authority she had wielded through mockery and exclusion, crumbling under the weight of documented heroism that made her previous behavior appear not just wrong, but deeply shameful. The realization that she had spent months attacking a genuine military family created an emotional crisis that challenged everything she believed about her own character and judgment. Mrs. Hughes approached Anna with tears visible in her eyes, her professional composure replaced by genuine remorse for the assumptions she had made about her student's family circumstances. The teacher's recognition of her own failure to see past economic indicators to understand Anna's true situation represented a personal reckoning that would influence her approach to education for the remainder of her career. "Anna," Mrs. Hughes said quietly, her voice thick with emotion as she struggled to find words adequate for addressing her misjudgment. "I owe you and your family an apology. I should have recognized your strength and dignity instead of making assumptions based on circumstances I didn't understand." Anna accepted the apology with the same grace she had demonstrated throughout the semester, her response reflecting maturity that impressed the adults who were witnessing her handling of unprecedented attention and validation. "Thank you, Mrs. Hughes," Anna replied simply, her voice steady despite the emotional intensity of the moment. "Dad always said that understanding takes time sometimes." Jennifer Clark found herself surrounded by community members who had previously viewed her family with indifference or subtle condescension. Their attitudes transformed by the revelation of her husband's heroism and their daughter's courage. The shift from being seen as charity cases to being recognized as a military family deserving respect created both gratitude and lingering hurt over years of misunderstanding. Mayor Steve Fox approached Jennifer with a careful demeanor of a politician, recognizing that his community's treatment of a military family reflected poorly on local leadership and values. His presence suggested that Anna's recognition would extend beyond school boundaries into broader community acknowledgement of military sacrifice. "Mrs. Clark," Mayor Fox said formally, "I want to personally apologize for any lack of support your family has experienced in our community. Riverside Glenn should have done better in recognizing and honoring your husband's service." The political nature of the apology was tempered by genuine recognition that the community had failed in its obligations to military families, creating opportunities for positive change in how veteran families would be treated in the future. Principal Collins coordinated with media representatives who were requesting interviews and follow-up stories. The national significance of Anna's situation attracting attention that would spread her story far beyond the boundaries of their small Tennessee town. The transformation of a routine Veterans Day assembly into a major news event represented validation that her father's service deserved widespread recognition. Captain Torres remained close to Anna and Jennifer, her role expanding from military liaison to family advocate as media interest intensified, and community members sought to understand the full implications of what they had witnessed. Her presence provided professional guidance for managing attention that could become overwhelming without proper support. "Anna," Captain Torres said gently, "there will probably be reporters who want to talk with you about today. You don't have to speak with anyone you don't want to, and your mother and I will help you decide what feels comfortable." The protection offered by military personnel ensured that Anna's newfound recognition would not become exploitative, maintaining focus on honoring her father's memory rather than sensationalizing her personal circumstances. Chase, Porter, approached Anna with visible reluctance, his earlier confidence replaced by genuine shame as he prepared to confront the reality of his behavior toward someone whose father had died serving his country. The public nature of his misjudgment made denial impossible while creating accountability that his privileged background had rarely required him to face. "Anna," Chase said quietly, his voice barely audible above the conversation surrounding them. "I was wrong about everything. I'm sorry for what I said about you and your dad." Anna studied his face with the careful attention she had learned to use when assessing whether adult apologies were genuine or simply responses to consequences. Chase's discomfort appeared authentic rather than performative, suggesting that the morning's events had created real understanding rather than mere embarrassment. "Okay," Anna replied simply, neither accepting nor rejecting his apology, but acknowledging it with the measured response that characterized her approach to social reconciliation. Ethan Scott beamed with pride as he witnessed his friend receiving the recognition she deserved. His loyalty throughout the difficult semester now vindicated by official military validation. His unwavering support had required courage in the face of social pressure, demonstrating friendship that transcended convenience or social calculation. "I always knew your dad was a hero," Ethan said, with the satisfied confidence of someone whose faith had been proven correct, despite popular opinion suggesting otherwise. Anna smiled at her friend's declaration, appreciating both his consistency and his understanding that heroism often required recognition from those closest to the situation rather than broader social acknowledgement. Evelyn Phillips coordinated with school administration to ensure that the day's events would be appropriately documented and remembered her experience with military families, providing valuable guidance for preserving the significance of Anna's recognition while protecting the family's privacy needs. "This changes how our community will treat military families," Evelyn observed to Principal Collins as they watched Anna interact with classmates and community members. Anna's courage in defending her father's memory has educated all of us about the cost of service and the importance of supporting those who sacrifice. The long-term implications of the morning's assembly extended beyond Anna's personal vindication to broader lessons about military respect and community responsibility that would influence Riverside Glenn's culture for years to come. As the formal assembly concluded and people began to disperse, a smaller group gathered around Anna and Jennifer to discuss practical matters related to the recognition they had received. General Carter remained present to ensure that the family understood their options for honoring Matthew's memory and accessing resources that had previously been unavailable due to classification restrictions. "Mrs. Clark," General Carter said, addressing Jennifer directly about matters that had been complicated by classified operations. "Master Chief Clark's sacrifice qualified your family for benefits and recognition that were delayed by security requirements. We'll work with you to ensure those issues are resolved." The promise of practical support addressed financial struggles that had compounded the emotional challenges of military widowhood, providing hope that Anna's education and future opportunities would not be limited by circumstances beyond their control. Staff Sergeant Green discussed scholarship opportunities available to children of service members killed in action, programs that could transform Anna's educational prospects while honoring her father's sacrifice through investment in her future achievements. Anna has demonstrated the kind of character and resilience that military scholarship programs are designed to support. Staff Sergeant Green explained to Jennifer her father's service, combined with her own strength, makes her an ideal candidate for educational assistance. The conversation about Anna's future possibilities created excitement about opportunities that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. The transformation from financial struggle to educational support, representing one of the most practical benefits of finally receiving recognition for Matthew's service. Colonel Newman coordinated with local veteran organizations to establish ongoing support for the Clark family, creating networks of assistance that would extend beyond the immediate recognition ceremony to provide sustained community connection and practical help. Military families shouldn't have to face challenges alone, Colonel Newman explained, as he outlined support services that would be available. Your community has military families and veterans who understand what you've experienced and want to help. The promise of ongoing support addressed isolation that had characterized much of Jennifer's experience as a military widow, providing connection to others who understood the unique challenges of honoring classified service while managing practical needs. As afternoon approached, and the initial excitement of recognition began to settle into longer-term implications, Anna found herself processing the magnitude of how completely her circumstances had changed. The respect and attention that had seemed impossible that morning were now her new reality, requiring adjustment to visibility after months of maintaining defensive invisibility. "Are you okay with all this attention?" Jennifer asked her daughter as they prepared to leave the school building that had been transformed by the morning's events. Anna considered the question carefully, weighing her relief at finally receiving validation against the challenges that public recognition would inevitably create. "It feels good that people finally know the truth about Dad," Anna replied thoughtfully. "But it's also a little scary to have so many people watching me." Jennifer understood her daughter's mixed emotions, recognizing that recognition came with responsibilities and expectations that would require ongoing support and guidance to manage successfully. The walk home through Riverside Glen carried new weight as neighbors and community members who had witnessed news coverage of the morning's assembly offered waves and expressions of respect that marked their family's transition from struggling to honored. The change in how people viewed them felt both validating and surreal after years of being overlooked or pied. At Pine Ridge Trailer Park, several neighbors gathered to congratulate Anna and express admiration for her courage in defending her father's memory despite pressure to remain silent. Their recognition that she had faced genuine hardship with dignity created community support that had been absent throughout their residency. Inside trailer number 47, Anna placed her father's Bronze Star medal in a position of honor beside his military portrait, the tangible proof of his heroism, finally providing the validation that his classified service had prevented during his lifetime. The medal represented not just recognition of his sacrifice, but acknowledgement of their family's right to pride in his legacy. As evening settled over their small home, Anna and Jennifer sat together, processing the day's transformation while contemplating what their new status as recognized military family would mean for their future in Riverside Glen. The challenges that had defined their experience were giving way to opportunities that had seemed impossible just hours earlier, though both understood that recognition brought responsibilities as well as benefits. What happens now? Anna asked her question encompassing everything from school relationships to community standing to her own understanding of her place in her father's continuing legacy. "Now, we get to live without hiding who we are," Jennifer replied, her voice carrying hope that had been absent for years of struggling alone with classified grief and financial hardship. Outside their window, the lights of Fort Campbell glowed in the distance, no longer representing distant military authority, but connection to a community that had finally acknowledged their place within the honored tradition of service and sacrifice that defined American military families throughout the nation's history. 6 months later, spring sunshine filtered through the windows of Riverside Glenn Elementary's newly renovated library, where Anna Clark sat reading to a group of kindergarten students who gathered around her with the kind of rapt attention that children reserved for stories told by someone they genuinely admired. The faded military jacket had been carefully preserved and now hung in a place of honor in the school's memorial display case, replaced by a new jacket that Anna wore with quiet confidence earned through surviving adversity and emerging stronger. The transformation of Anna's status within the school community had rippled outward to create broader changes in how Riverside Glenn approached military education and family support. The Matthew Clark Memorial Scholarship Fund, established with donations from across Tennessee after Anna's story gained national attention, provided annual educational assistance to children of fallen service members while ensuring that her father's legacy would continue to impact lives for generations to come. Mrs. Hughes had spent the intervening months reimagining her approach to education, developing curriculum that emphasized character recognition over economic assessment, while creating classroom environments where students like Anna could thrive, regardless of their family's financial circumstances. Her professional growth represented the kind of institutional change that transformed individual recognition into systemic improvement. And then the brave soldier protected everyone in his unit. Anna read from a picture book about military service, her voice clear and confident as she shared stories that helped younger children understand concepts of duty and sacrifice that had once seemed too complex for elementary education. The kindergarten students listened with the absorbed attention that characterized their age group's approach to learning, their questions revealing genuine curiosity about military life rather than the skepticism or mockery that had characterized Anna's earlier school experience. "Did your daddy really save people like the soldier in the story?" asked a 5-year-old named Marcus, his question reflecting the kind of innocent admiration that children naturally felt for heroic narratives. "Yes," Anna replied simply, her comfort with discussing her father's service representing growth that had required months of adjustment to public recognition. "He helped keep people safe, and now we remember him by helping other people understand how important that work is." Principal Collins observed from the doorway with satisfaction that reflected both personal pride in Anna's development and professional recognition that her story had elevated the entire school community's understanding of military sacrifice and family strength. The administrative changes implemented since the Veterans Day Assembly had transformed Riverside Glenn Elementary into a model for military family support, with programs designed to identify and assist students whose parents served or had served in ways that might not be immediately apparent to school personnel. Jennifer Clark had accepted a position as Family Liaison Coordinator for the school district, her experience navigating military widowhood while supporting Anna's education, providing valuable expertise for helping other families facing similar challenges. The role offered both meaningful work and financial stability that allowed her to move from survival mode to building a future that honored Matthew's memory through service to others. The small house on Maple Street that Jennifer and Anna now called home represented progress that felt both practical and symbolic. Their ability to leave Penariage Trailer Park, marking a transition from struggle to stability, while maintaining connection to the community that had ultimately embraced their family's military legacy. Tiffany Reed had spent months grappling with the reality of her behavior toward Anna, the public nature of her misjudgment, creating ongoing social consequences that forced genuine self-reflection rather than superficial apology. Her parents' decision to enroll her in community service programs focused on military family support represented accountability that extended beyond individual remorse to meaningful action. "I've been volunteering at the Veterans Center on weekends," Tiffany told Anna during a rare conversation between them, her voice carrying genuine humility that marked significant personal growth. "It helps me understand what military families actually go through." Anna accepted this information with the same measured response she had developed for managing complex social situations, neither rejecting Tiffany's attempts at redemption nor fully embracing friendship with someone whose cruelty had caused genuine pain. "That's good," Anna replied neutrally, her focus remaining on the kindergarten students who were beginning to ask questions about the pictures in their military service book. Chase Porter had transferred to a private school in Nashville after his family decided that a change of environment would better serve his character development. His father's defense contracting business suffering reputation damage that reflected broader community re-evaluation of civilian attitudes toward military service. The departure had created space for other students to develop more authentic relationships with Anna, freed from the social pressure that Chase's presence had represented throughout the difficult semester when her family circumstances remained unrecognized. Ethan Scott remained Anna's closest friend, their bonds strengthened by shared experience of navigating social dynamics that had tested loyalty and character in ways that elementary students rarely encountered. His steadfast support during Anna's most difficult period had created friendship that transcended convenience or social calculation. "Want to help me set up for the memorial service planning meeting?" Ethan asked as the library reading session concluded and younger students returned to their regular activities. Anna nodded agreement. The Memorial Day Planning Committee, representing one of several volunteer commitments she had accepted as part of her role as an unofficial ambassador for military family awareness within the community. Evelyn Phillips had expanded her volunteer coordination role to encompass regional military family support, Anna's story serving as a catalyst for broader recognition of veteran service members and their children throughout rural Tennessee. Her experience with military nursing provided credibility for advocating policy changes that would prevent other families from experiencing the isolation and financial hardship that had characterized the Clark family's early years in Riverside Glenn. Anna has become an inspiration for military children across the state, Evelyn explained to a group of educators attending a workshop on supporting students from military families. Her courage in defending her father's memory while maintaining dignity under pressure demonstrates the strength that military families develop through their service experience. The regional recognition had created speaking opportunities that allowed Anna to share her story with audiences who could benefit from understanding the challenges and strengths that characterized military family life. Though Jennifer ensured that such activities remained secondary to Anna's education and normal childhood development, General Carter had remained personally involved in Anna's recognition, his ongoing interest in her education and character development, reflecting the military community's commitment to supporting families who had sacrificed for national security. His occasional visits to Riverside Glen served both to maintain Anna's connection to her father's military legacy and to reinforce community understanding of the importance of supporting veteran families. "Your father would be amazed to see how you've grown," General Carter told Anna during his most recent visit. His observation reflecting both personal admiration for her character and professional recognition of her impact on military family awareness. The scholarship opportunities that had emerged from Anna's story had transformed her educational prospects from uncertain to unlimited, with multiple universities expressing interest in supporting her future academic pursuits as part of their commitment to military family assistance programs. "I want to study psychology," Anna told the scholarship coordinator during a planning meeting. Her career interest reflecting desire to help other children navigate challenges similar to those she had experienced. "I think understanding how people cope with difficult situations could help military families." The academic focus represented maturity that impressed adults while remaining grounded in Anna's authentic desire to transform her personal experience into service that would benefit others facing similar challenges. Staff Sergeant Green had been promoted to leadership of Regional Military Family Support Services. His work with Anna's situation demonstrating the importance of proactive intervention when military children faced social or educational challenges that reflected broader community misunderstanding of military service. Anna's case taught us that we can't assume military families will automatically receive appropriate support. Staff Sergeant Green explained to military personnel training for family advocacy roles. Sometimes, the most important service happens in school cafeterias and community meetings rather than on military bases. The lessons learned from Anna's experience had influenced military policy regarding family support and community education, creating programs designed to prevent other children from facing harassment based on ignorance about classified military service. Mayor Fox had implemented annual recognition ceremonies for military families within Riverside Glenn, the community's commitment to honoring service representing institutional change that extended beyond individual apologies to systematic support for veteran families. Anna Clark's courage educated our entire community about the true meaning of military service. Mayor Fox declared during the inaugural ceremony, his recognition reflecting political awareness that supporting military families was both morally necessary and beneficial for community reputation. As afternoon faded toward evening, Anna walked home through streets where she now received respectful greetings from neighbors and community members who understood her family's connection to military service. The transformation from invisible struggle to recognized honor had required adjustment to visibility while maintaining the character traits that had carried her through adversity. The Bronze Star Medal remained in its place of honor in their living room, accompanied now by photographs documenting Anna's speaking engagements and community service activities that demonstrated her growing role as an advocate for military family support and understanding. "How was the reading session?" Jennifer asked as Anna arrived home, her question reflecting both maternal interest and professional curiosity about educational programs that supported military family awareness. "Good," Anna replied, settling at the kitchen table, where she now completed homework that included advanced placement courses made possible by scholarship support. The kids asked lots of questions about what it means to be brave. Jennifer smiled at her daughter's summary, recognizing that Anna's ability to inspire courage in others represented the most meaningful legacy of Matthew's service and sacrifice. Outside their window, Fort Campbell's lights still glowed in the distance, but the base no longer represented distant authority. Instead, it symbolized connection to a community that had finally acknowledged the Clark family's place within the honored tradition of American military service, where courage was measured not just in battlefield heroism, but in the daily strength required to defend truth against doubt and honor memory despite adversity. As night settled over Riverside Glen, Anna Clark completed her homework with the quiet confidence of someone who had learned that true strength came not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them with dignity, integrity, and the unshakable knowledge that some things were worth defending regardless of the personal cost required to protect them. The faded military jacket, hanging in the school's memorial case, would continue to educate students about the meaning of service and sacrifice. While Anna carried forward her father's legacy through actions that demonstrated the values he had died protecting: courage in the face of adversity, loyalty to truth over convenience, and the understanding that freedom required defenders in classrooms and communities, as well as on distant battlefields where heroes served and sacrificed for principles larger than themselves. The end. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoy this one, you won't want to miss this. Just click to watch, and don't forget to subscribe.